The stars are right, and that means it's time for another episode of The Whisper in Darkness. I'm your host, the Man from Lang. Thank you very much for joining me today. On this episode, I am continuing with my reviews of the player cards in Heart of the Elders, the third Mythos pack in the Forgotten Age cycle. This time, I am taking a look at the Seeker cards. There are spoilers throughout if you care about that sort of thing. If you enjoy what you hear, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Without further ado, let's get started. The first Seeker card in the pack is Otherworldly Compass. It's a 2-cost asset that costs 2 experience points. It has 2 intellect skill icons and the item and relic traits. It has the game text action, Exhaust Otherworldly Compass. Investigate. Your location gets -X shroud for this investigation, where X is the number of revealed locations connected to your location. The Otherworldly Compass takes up a hand slot. Now, there are very few cards that are capable of reducing the shroud value of a location. Everyone, I assume, is familiar with the trusty flashlight from the core set, which lets you take an investigate action and gives your location -2 shroud. Besides flashlight, there's a lantern, a survivor asset from the Path to Carcosa, which gives your location -1 shroud during an investigate action. The key difference here between flashlight and lantern, besides the shroud reduction, is that flashlight enters play with only 3 supplies, while the lantern has unlimited uses. Finally, there's Arcane Insight, a Seeker asset released in Black Star's Rise. It lets you spend 1 charge to reduce the shroud value of your location by 2 until the end of the turn. It comes with only 3 charges, and it costs 4 experience points, which means that you're not going to see this hit the table all that often. There is at least one more card that will reduce the shroud value of a location. The Skeleton Key, a rogue asset, but it won't be released until the Depths of Yoth Mythos pack. The key is fast and will set the attached location's shroud to 1. However, that's where the similarities with the Otherworldly Compass end. The key costs 3 resources, and it has the exceptional keyword, which means it will set you back 4 experience points. My first impressions of the key is that it doesn't seem very practical. It has the fast keyword, which is good, but it only sets the shroud value to 1, which means there's still plenty of chaos tokens in the bag that can cause you to fail the skill test, unlike if it, say, set the shroud value to 0. You also need to attach and detach the key from a location in addition to any investigate actions that you want to take. That's a real tempo killer in my book, but we'll see how I feel about it in a month's time when I do my Depths of Yoth review. Who knows, maybe I'll have a new insight into it by then. Otherworldly Compass has a couple of things going for it. First, it does not use supplies or charges like the flashlight, so it will last you the entire scenario. However, you do need to exhaust it when you trigger it, which means you can only use it once per turn unless you can find some way to ready it, which I don't think exists at the time of this recording. The compass has the potential to reduce the shroud value of your location by X, where X is the number of revealed locations connected to your location. It's that revealed location bit that really hurts this card. The number of revealed locations on the table is going to depend a lot on the scenario that you're playing and whether you're playing solo or multiplayer, and your fellow investigators are able to spread out a little bit. Let's take a look at a couple of examples from the Dunwich Legacy campaign. If you're playing extracurricular activity, X is going to be 1 or 2 most of the time. In The House Always Wins, X is equal to 1. It's also going to be 1 in the Miskatonic Museum or the Essex County Express. During Blood on the Altar, X is going to be 1 most of the time, especially if you tackle the map in a linear fashion. Undimensioned and Unseen is the rare scenario where X has the potential to be 3 or even 4 depending on the location, while X drops back to 1 for where Doom awaits. And most likely it will also be 1 at most locations that appear in Lost in Time and Space as well. Now, I think you can see a trend here. If you purchase Otherworldly Compass during the Dunwich Legacy campaign, you're not really paying 2 experience points for the shroud reduction, since it's only going to be 1 or 2 most of the time. You're paying that 2 experience points for the unlimited uses. And that really starts to beg the question whether you're better off saving that experience and sticking with the flashlight, which will give you more bang for your buck if you're able to spread it out over 3 turns. Honestly, I really don't think that it's worth paying 2 experience points for a card that struggles to be as good or better than Flashlight in many situations. And Flashlight is, of course, a level 0 card. Now, that said, I am speaking strictly here about the Dunwich Legacy campaign. The compass may be more valuable in the Forgotten Age campaign due to the way locations in the Explore deck connect. If the locations come out in the right order, X could hit 2 or 3 much more consistently. Another question that's worth asking is, who is this card for anyway? It's very rare indeed for a hardcore seeker such as Daisy Walker or Rex Murphy to pack Flashlight, because generally they've got the intellect to bust through the shroud value of most locations. If they're not packing Flashlight, then you've really got to ask yourself, why would they be interested in the compass, which has a very similar effect? That leaves Roland Banks and Lola Hayes as the 2 investigators who might be interested in this card. And honestly, I think they probably have better things to spend their experience points on. Having played a fair amount of Roland in standalone mode, I never felt the need for a card like this, and I don't think I will in the future. Now, Otherworldly Compass might have been more tempting if you could play it in combination with a card such as Archaic Glyphs Guiding Stones from A Phantom of Truth. Lowering the shroud value so you can discover multiple clues at a location seems like a great game plan. Unfortunately, both cards require you to take an investigate action. So unfortunately, that plan is out of the question. Now, the one good thing going for the Otherworldly Compass is that it does have the Relic trait, which means you can search your deck for it with Dr. Ellie Horowitz, a Seeker asset from the Forgotten Age Deluxe expansion. Now, you can stack the compass on her so it won't take up a hand slot. Roland might find that valuable if he was to play Dr. Ellie, but I'm not sure what that deck would look like. Then again, there are a lot of relics with a lot more power than the Otherworldly Compass, including one in this very pack. So I think you probably can find better things to stack on Horowitz than the compass. Ultimately, I'm afraid Otherworldly Compass is another disappointment here, a rare disappointment for Seekers. The value of X is going to depend a lot on the scenario and whether you are playing solo or multiplayer. As we've seen, it rarely creeps above 1 during the Dunwich Legacy campaign, and I wouldn't be surprised if it struggled to rise above 1 during most of the Path to Carcosa campaign as well. The Otherworldly Compass may work better in the Forgotten Age if the locations in the Exploration deck come out in the right order, and that may be worth testing. I really want to like this card, but that revealed location caveat really limits how much mileage you're going to get out of the compass. Most hardcore seekers aren't that interested in this type of effect anyway, so the compass ends up feeling like it's a card that's really waiting for the right investigator to take advantage on it. To take advantage of it, and so I think I'm going to pass on it for now. The second Seeker card in the pack is the level 3 version of Expose Weakness, a Seeker event that was released in Undimensioned and Unseen. This version is a free event that costs 3 experience points. It has Intellect, Combat, and Wild Skill icons and the Insight trait. It has the game text Fast, play during any player window. Choose an enemy at your location, test Intellect X, where X is that enemy's fight value. If you succeed, treat that enemy's fight value as if it were 0 for the next attack performed against it this phase. Draw 1 card. So I went back and I listened to what I said about level 1 Expose Weakness to prepare for this review, and I was somewhat surprised that I was generally positive about the card. I said the card was quote-unquote fascinating and interesting, which everyone should know by now is reviewer code for I really don't know what to make of this card. While I still think the card is fascinating, few other players do, as evidenced by the decks posted over at Arkham DB. While a few players such as Anio9988 experimented with this card, mostly in Rex Murphy builds. Most other players, I think, put this in their binders and simply forgot about it. I still like Expose Weakness, though. It's janky as hell, but you can really set up some devastating combinations with it in multiplayer against elite and non-elite enemies alike. As I mentioned during my previous review, Expose Weakness gives a dedicated Seeker a way to make a meaningful contribution to combat, especially against elite bosses. All of those resources you collected during this scenario with Dr. Mylan Christopher aren't going to do you much good while fighting the big bad, so you might as well spend some of them to reduce the enemy's fight value during the next attack performed against it. If that attack happens to be with a shotgun or a combination of backstab and double or nothing, you can really inflict some fierce damage on the enemy. It's also worth noting that Expose Weakness is one of those rare cards that you can play during any player window, which opens up even more janky possibilities. As Motux points out in his excellent two-part series about player windows on his blog, Strange Solution, you may play Expose Weakness in combination with Quick Thinking, a rogue skill from Undimensioned Unseen, to launch a surprise attack against an enemy during any player window, and that includes the one that opens after enemies with the Hunter keyword move. If a Hunter enemy moves to your location, you can try to kill it before it kills you. Like I said, it's janky as hell, but it's worth keeping your eyes open for these types of combinations as the card pool expands, however impractical those combinations may be. The biggest problem with Expose Weakness, as some players have pointed out, is that it's often just as effective to commit the card to a skill test for its two combat skill icons as it is to try to reduce the enemy's fight value. It didn't help that later in the Dunwich Legacy cycle, Seekers received Strange Solution Acidic Ichor, a weapon on par with Shotgun in terms of damage output. There is really not much point in playing a support role when a Seeker card can dish out the same, if not more damage than the Guardian in the group. Now, Level 3 Expose Weakness is very similar to its Level 1 counterpart. It swaps one of its combat skill icons for a wild skill icon, which is nice, and it lets you draw a card after you play it, effectively replacing itself. The biggest change, however, is that it lets you treat the enemy's fight value as 0 for the next attack if you pass the Intellect X skill test. That is huge if you can reduce the enemy's fight value to 0. The attack can't miss unless you draw the Tentacle or another token that causes you to automatically fail a skill test. Your odds of shooting a boss in the face for 5 damage with a shotgun go up significantly if that enemy's fight value is 0, and doubling a fight value of 0 with double or nothing is, well, that's still 0. That shotgun double or nothing combination that Leo Anderson wants to pull off just became that much more effective if a Seeker in the party can get this card down first. Expose Weakness has always been a very janky card, and the Level 3 version does nothing to change that. However, I think you're far more likely to play this card in order to lower an enemy's fight value to 0 for the next attack, rather than simply commit this card to the skill test for 2 combat skill icons. I don't think this card is going to find its way into many multiplayer decks. However, if you're able to pull off a combination with Expose Weakness, you're going to be telling your friends about it for years to come. And I quite like cards like that. I do have a soft spot for them, so I'm not going to hate on Expose Weakness too much. I think it's pretty. It'd be amazing if you could do it. Seekers haven't received much in the way of astounding cards in the Mythos pack this cycle. And that trend continues in Heart of the Elders. While I like the concept behind Otherworldly Compass, most players avoid putting Flashlight in their Seeker decks, and I don't think the Compass is compelling enough for them to spend their hard-earned experience points on it. I think players who do experiment with the Compass are going to be a little underwhelmed by its performance due to that revealed location clause. Perhaps we'll see an investigator down the line who can put it to good use. Unfortunately, that revealed location clause really hurts it. Yeah, it would be amazing if it was just locations, but at that point it would probably be broken. As for Expose Weakness, we've seen this card before, so it's not exactly breaking new ground either. It's really janky, but some players really enjoy playing jank, and who can blame them? You'll never forget the time that you pull off some ridiculous combo with it. Expose Weakness is a little too corner case to find its way into many decks, but it's the type of card that you can have a lot of fun with, which is kind of the point of the whole game. If you've got a great story about Expose Weakness, make sure you share it down in the comments below, because I would love to hear about it. That's going to do it for me today. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. If you need to contact me, I can be reached at manfromleng@gmail.com. I'm also on Twitter at manfromleng. Until the stars are right, keep your shotgun close and your elder sign closer. Take care out there, and happy investigating.